my name is Eugene, but most people throughout my life have just called me Huge, the Australian way of just shortening everyone's name. So I owe a lot to photography. Photography has been a huge part of my life. It's touched every part of my life. It's given me opportunities that I never would have dreamed of. I met my beautiful wife through photography. I've flown all around the world. People have invited us to countries, boats. It's been a great journey. I've also met some very interesting people. So I'm going to start off with giving you a little story about someone I met pretty recently. It was a Friday and we got a phone call in the gallery, and it was it was like 5 o'clock, and it was this agent, or it's like a touring agent, and she was like, I need to talk to Eugene. I've got a VIP. I want a special opening in the gallery, 7 o'clock, Saturday morning. It's got to happen, you know. And the staff came and told me, and I went, everyone's a VIP in Bondi, right? So it's not such a big deal. So I said, I'm about to leave, go surfing or something like that. And basically what happened was she insisted, no, I must talk to Eugene, right? Anyway, we had a chat. And she said, look, it's a big Hollywood VIP, wants to come and meet you, very interested in your artwork, special opening, 7 o'clock. We had staff drinks that night, and I was like, oh, no, I don't want to open at 7. Anything could happen. But anyway, sorry, we're not in sync here. Then this guy, she goes, all right, I'm not allowed to tell you. I've signed confidentiality agreements, but it's Will Smith. He wants to meet you. Do you want to meet him? Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. I'll be there. Anyway, it was, I don't get that starstruck, but this guy's pretty impressive. He's a really good human being. He's very authentic. He came to the gallery, very engaging, very interested in my work. And I was pretty impressed. But the most amazing thing was he came in, the 4 vans rocked up out the front. The first one was like the Prime Minister of America's security team. They all came in, scoped it. There had to be no one in the gallery, no staff. And then all clear, the second van comes, the door opens, Will Smith comes out, comes in. And the first thing, you'll see a little video, one of the first things he says to me is, right, I want you to come with me to Lizard Island on my private jet for a week. Let's do it. What do you think? He had 3 cameras rolling on me at the time, I've got to be honest, I was so hungover. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. I got Will Smith, and I'm like, this is all too much for me. It didn't happen, but I never would have thought my photography career would have got me an invite like that. It was pretty impressive. Anyway, it didn't happen for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of legalities, and we couldn't work it out, and he was going in 48 hours. I said, I've got a family, bring your family. Anyway, we couldn't pile everyone in the private jet, and Lizard Island couldn't take kids. So anyway, it was complicated, didn't happen. But here's a little video.
I always feel like I'm looking for something, but I don't really know what it is. I can tell when I'm near it, and pretty sure I'll know when I find it. There's a photographer I love that does these really hot water photos. Eugene Tan. He's a beast.
I've never been called a beast before.
Eugene Tan. He's a beast. That's the man right there. That's the man. So I've been doing this a long time, 18 years. This is what I do. So I started in the water, shooting just the surface of the water, like waves, and then I moved into aerial stuff. This is
He didn't get naked in the gallery garden, thank God. It was a pretty funny guy. We spent an hour together, had a good chat. It was very generous to post that onto his YouTube tube. We got a lot of inquiries from the USA after that. He's got a very loyal following. He was on Instagram for 3 weeks and he gathered 5 million people in 3 weeks. He started a YouTube channel and he got 2 million fans in 3 weeks. And I was just blown away. So this was the start of his YouTubing and he's traveling around the world. And anyway, it was a great little thing. For who would have dreamt that photography would have brought me that? Okay, so I thought a lot about today what you guys would, if I was sitting in the audience, what do I want to know? What would I really want to know? I'm going to tell you this, and also the brief from Glenn was, tell your story. How did this happen, I have a very different story to a lot of the other photographers that have spoken so far this weekend, in that I didn't set out on a plan, right? I didn't wake up and go, I'm going to be a photographer, I'm going to go this way. I didn't assist. I didn't really have anyone to learn off because, I jumped the gun a bit, but I didn't know what was going to happen. It just I fell into it. There was, I'm a beach guy, obviously, but I found that not many people were working down the beach, and there was something down there, being a saltwater baby. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a second, the whole story. But along my way, I want to mention, and you'll hear throughout the entire story, there are a lot of challenges, right? A lot of headwind, So what you probably don't see a lot of the time is you see all the successes, but you don't see the headwinds. And I also call them the naysayers. So my whole career has been full of people saying to me, you can't do that. You can't make a living out of taking photographs of the beach. Who's going to do that? How's that going to work? You can't publish your own books. You don't have distribution channels. What do you know about printing books? I remember when I signed leases in the galleries, I was like, what do I know about retail? And the fact is, I didn't. But I didn't sit down and formulate a plan. I just got in there and got dirty and gave it a crack. So really, I started from blogging and then moved into photography. And this is the story how it happened. So I'm a beach kid. This is, I think I'm a year or two old here. It's Rottnest Island. I love the ocean. I've grown up surfing, windsurfing, water skiing. Anything to do with the ocean, I'm into it. Anything inland, I struggle. And there's a bit on that a bit later when I've been taken inland. My career started here. This is my school. I wasn't that into school. My son's sitting here in the front row. That doesn't mean you've got to be into school, right, buddy? I wasn't the best student. I didn't find school relevant at all to me. I used to just sit in class all day and draw pictures. I was a bit of an illustrator, so I'd have visual diaries piled up, just sketching, bored. And then I discovered in that building, and it's a really old traditional school, quite boring, they had a dark room. No one used it. It was hidden under a staircase with like a secret door. So then I thought, that's cool. No one uses it. And cover your ears, Jet, I used to wag a bit of class and hide in the dark room. And I found it was my little sanctuary. No one bothered me there. I could disappear. I used to shoot pictures in the schoolyard of like the fruit fights, the wrestling and portraits. I joined the media class, which at the time was really uncool, right? So no one did media. There was like 4 kids. The media teacher had no idea what to do in this room. And I just thought, all right, well, I can hide in there. I can print my shots. There was piles of paper. Let's just go for it and see what happens. Then I started at home. I set up a darkroom in my mother's laundry. She hated it. We got fixer and chemicals all over all over the laundry. But just teaching myself, I just sat there, got an enlarger, worked out, okay, exposures, what's going on. And I guess that's where my passion for photography came from. So I finished school. Then this thing came out. Now, this shows my age. This is a Macintosh, the first Macintosh computer. It had Mac Paint on it. You could draw things on it. I couldn't believe it. It wasn't just a screen full of code. So I bought one. I was obsessed with it, played with it. And then Photoshop came out. Photoshop in black and white. And can you believe that? I've been, since it was version 1. It was incredible. And I was totally engulfed by this computer. And I was like, oh, distraction, okay? I can play with this computer. So then I did this course called, at the time, it was a graphic design course with some sort of computer component to it. I did a degree in it, and I learned how to use a computer. Now, why I'm telling you this is we live in a digital era now, and you'll see later when I come back to it, that was really important to know how to use a computer, obviously. There was no internet back then. So I studied this graphic design course, using computers. You built CD-ROMs. Remember these things? You haven't seen them for a long time. You used to build interactive CDs, so I learned how to do that. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I was really into it. Then I finished that degree, and I went totally sideways. Well, not completely sideways. They're all learning curves. I was a civilian in the Navy, a civilian contractor, sorry. And I used to work on the Collins-class submarines. These were made in Australia and Adelaide. And what I used to do is do all the simulation graphics. So I worked out how to build like 3D models. And so they'll do things like the garbage disposal chute, and they'll do a process around it. And they'd sit in the simulator, and what was on screen is what I used to do. It was an incredibly high-paying job for a young kid. It was a long way from home. I had to drive an hour and a half every day to get there. But I learned, still working on computers and graphic design. I was like, I was getting really kind of good on the computer, right? Then I got a job. I got sick of the Navy, and I got a job in Eclipse, which is, they were a big kind of graphic design. They were making CD-ROMs at the time, company in Perth, and then they grew to the eastern seaboard, which is why I'm in Sydney. That job, I did it for 10 years or 9 years. It's very important to what happened next, because for a lot of reasons, we evolved into websites. So from CD-ROMs to websites, big move. The internet came out. I was like, wow, okay. I became a creative director, right? So what that means is I had a team of creators. We used to build the graphics for these websites. And you're always using Photoshop, right? So the whole way through using Photoshop, working with that tool. The web was getting bigger. I knew really early on, this is going to be huge. Now, you all sit there today and go, yeah, duh, but back then you wouldn't believe it. People were like, oh, I don't know about this internet thing. I don't know about, email. Who needs it? I've got fax machines. So these things at this time, this is in the 90s, these things are growing popularity. And I was really at the forefront of these tools. And I thought, wow, email, web, this is great. No one was doing much with it. I started, by the way, this is not my work. I couldn't find any of my work. But for example, I learned something very interesting. I did the ANZ NetBank, one of the first ones. Design the interface. Now, it's really boring graphically, right? But it teaches you how to think from the customer's perspective, what to click on, what buttons need to be named. Now, that sounds boring, but later on, you see, we become e-commerce guys, and Aquabumps sell stuff online. This is really important to work out early how to sell stuff online, usability, what's going to work, what makes things sell online. And I did other stuff like Holden.com and all these other big websites. So there I am, creative director, building this stuff. The only problem with all of this was I was getting bored, sitting in my cubicle, punching this out all day. Then this thing came out. Now, this changed everything for me. I don't know if it's the exact model, but Kodak brought out a 20 grand digital camera. And I remember in the 90s going, what, I can take a photo, I can download it, I skip the darkroom, this is really cool. The immediacy for me was very special. I convinced my boss to buy me one. I said, we need this for work. It's going to save us so much money. I put a big business case in. I went hard. And he was like, all right. And then as soon as we got it, I took it home, took it to the beach, and played around with it. And this is, you probably see where I'm going with this. This is how it all started. By the way, throughout all of this, I was a mad keen surfer. If I'm not working, I'm surfing, you know what I mean? So surfing's one of those things that just takes over, you haven't got room for much else apart from family. And so surfing all the time. And then I was like, oh man, I'm so bored at work. I'm going to start something without clients, without any restrictions, complete creative freedom, because I was just sitting in meetings all day. We had a team of like 20 designers, so I'd sit in the meeting, write notes, and they'd run off and do the creative part. And I was like, this is not creative. This is not what I feel like I'm good at. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to join the dots here. I need to create something with passion, with my skills from work, and something, and the beach, try and join it all together. Now, I know it seems obvious, but at the time, it wasn't that obvious for me. Then something interesting happened. I actually just added this slide this morning. I don't know how I've overlooked it. I've never really talked about this, but this guy actually started me in shooting in the water. So I've got that digital camera. This is John Frank. He's an extremely famous water photographer. What was interesting about him is he shot, surfing world covers, guys in barrels, but he also had an arty side, and that was his passion project. Randomly, because I could build websites, I had this funny digital camera, 20 grand thing. Surfing World magazine called me up and said, why don't you go with 6 pro surfers and this guy to Samoa and let's just see what happens. Do a blog. Or blogs weren't even formed. Remember, no social media, no blogs. And they're like, just do a website and put some pictures of the pro surfers. I thought, wow, that's going to be rather interesting. So I went along and I watched John Frank work, a professional shooting film in the water. I looked at his housings. We sat on the boat every day. I swam with him every day. I used to put that Canon, that 20 grand camera, I put it in a plastic bag, a Ziploc bag, and I put it in my teeth, and I used to swim with him. I know, can you imagine being my boss? Completely disrespecting the property, I guess. We didn't lose it. But then John Frank, there was no swell one day in Samoa. He goes, let's just make a water housing. And I was like, great, with what? And you wouldn't believe it. We found some perspex and silicon, and we made our first water housing. Now, I searched everywhere for the photos, couldn't find them, so you have to trust me, they were pretty bad. But it was a learning curve. He got me into it, and it got my interest into it. So then I was like, this water thing's good. I can jump in the water before work, shoot, upload, then go to my creative director job, where it was quite boring. And I felt really free, I was combining my photography, my surfing, and the ocean all in one hit. So if a lot of you don't know, that's just a normal camera inside there. It's like putting it into a lunchbox. That's an Aquatech housing. I've been using them for years. They're brilliant. It's a great form of photography. The reason why I love shooting in the water is because you're so close to your subjects. There's not many forms of sport photography or any photography where you're so close. So let's say you're shooting football, you're sitting on the sidelines, big lens. I find that so impersonal, and they touched on that yesterday. With shooting in the water, you're inside the tubes, You're inside with the surfer and you're 3 feet away. A lot of the time you've got to be super close. So it's so intimate shooting in the water. And, you feel good afterwards, you know what I mean? Like most mornings I swim for an hour or two. So you imagine how great you feel if you're in the ocean for that long. So then this started, I was like, I'm taking pictures in the water, inspired by John Frank and our trip. I thought, right, I'm just going to send these to my mates to make them really jealous. And there's no business plan here, right? I'm like, attach to my work email. And this is when you only got about 5 emails a day, right? So we're still in the 90s. So you read everything, you know. I used to bring down the work email server all the time because I put too many attachments. I didn't know how to resize that well. The IT director would come running down and goes, who is taking over the mail server? You know what I mean? I won't do it again, I promise. As you can see, I was losing a lot of interest in my day job. And then I started doing formatted emails. We actually, Eclipse, where I worked, this design web company, they were kind of becoming big. They worked out how to do formatted emails really early on. Nowadays you can just do, there's about 20 engines you can do, but this was really cutting edge. So formatted emails means it's already loaded in your inbox, and that was a breakthrough for me. I thought, well, I can just give people a 2-minute escape every day in their inbox for free. How cool's that? So you wouldn't believe it, it grew like wildfire. My 50 or 20 mates, half of them because I was originally in Perth and now I was living in Sydney, I was like, guys, check this out. This is the beach today on my digital camera, and they were like, wow, immediacy. This is before social media or even blogs or anything remotely like that. So the only way to share pictures really was stick it on a website and no one came, or you emailed it to people, right? So early days. It grew. We grew fast. We hit 50,000 in no time, subscribers. I still get people in the gallery today going, I remember your first emails when they weren't formatted, they were attachments. Now, I know they're hardcore readers, right? That's a long time. I've been doing this for 19 years. I've posted, I worked out the other day, nearly 6,000 times I've shot in the morning, gone and posted and emailed it out. So 6,000. So there's a lot of repetition there. Anyway, people come into the gallery and they're like, hey, I love it. I've been a part of this. I've been reading it for so long. Let's get some artwork. At this point, I hadn't had a name for it. It was the email from the beach. You know what I mean? People used to email me going, can I join your thing with the beach? And I was like, this thing needs a name. I was trained in graphic design. I used to design logos as well. I was like, it needs a strong name. It needs something that's easy to spell. It needs something that I can get the .com, the .com.au for. Because in the 90s, there was this mad rush to buy the URLs, right? So everyone was going out and buying, shop.com and realestate.com. So everything was walking out the door. If you didn't make something up that was catchy, that was easy to spell, you wouldn't get it. You wouldn't be able to get registered. And I got the trademarks and everything. So I've always written my name like that, huge, right, with 4 dots. I have no idea why. It's just one of those random things. I kind of felt like the brand needed something not Eugene Tan photography. Now, I know a lot of people use that. It didn't sum up what I did. I felt, and my name's kind of weird, a French name with a Chinese name. Huge waves, Bondi Beach photography. It was all a bit bland. Aquabumps seemed a bit exciting, bump in the ocean. We called it Aquabumps. Then, out of demand. So we're still going on the hobby path where, I didn't really have a website. I built websites for a living, but I didn't have one. It's like the plumber with leaking pipes, right? So I was like, oh God, one day all these people emailing me want to be on my subscription list. I better build a website. Now the website consisted of, you could subscribe. It had all the previous posts, which, it was becoming a valuable archive. I've got the weather for the last 19 years. So we built this archive. Notice board. And this is all free, right? I give it all away for free. You can come to my site for free. the notice board was really important. It was a community piece on my site. I wanted to give back, and people still use it today for free. Even like the local real estate agents jump on there, which they probably shouldn't. And they love it. It's very successful. The community's tight. This isn't the first website, by the way. It was a lot uglier than that. You imagine, this is probably around 2000. But this is the current site. Then all these people started saying, hey, I love your photos that you're shooting every day. Can I buy it? Can I buy a print of it? Or it would be like, they're my legs. I want to print on my wall. I'm in one of the shots. Can I buy it? And at first I thought, wow, this is such a hassle. I don't know anything about printing, framing. I don't really, know what to do there. We put a buy link and we started selling prints. And this is very early on. There was no one doing this, right? There was no one doing a photo a day. I couldn't find anyone in Australia or overseas, in fact, doing this. So it was a new idea. So then I learned, I've got to learn quick. Learn how to frame things very well, present things very well. And this is what happened, I used to have a pile of frames under my desk at my office. People used to come, and after hours, I'd lay them on the floor, and they'd go, take that one, and I'd make my $100. And that was the only time I made money out of Aquabumps. And it was really driven from the customer wanting them, right? So I still didn't really have a focus or a plan. I was messing around in the time when I was working out presentation techniques. I thought, surf, photos, printing. It kind of sounds like a shop in Coota when they have those tacky waves. I was like, I don't want to be the tacky wave guy, I had a graphic design background and I was really into architecture and design. I needed something new to come to market. The hobby, that is, that was starting to turn into a market. I played around with acrylic. Now, I know everyone's seen acrylic, right? But I got in the 90s, no one was really doing acrylic, I don't even think Ken Duncan, wherever you are, I don't think you were doing it. So I thought, wow, I shoot pictures of water and I can make them very shiny with no border and put them on the wall. This is cool, right? And it looks sophisticated. So then, that became important. And then probably the biggest thing happened in my life, well, second biggest, the big leap. So I don't know where I got the courage from, but it just happened. 9.5 years from being a creative director, I was like, I got to get out of here. This is not inspiring me. I need to do something else. Like Aquabumps is kind of niggling away, going more attention. It was, a lot of readers were coming along. People asked me to buy prints, but I still didn't know how to monetize yet. So I did the leap, resigned. I remember I did it. I was on the Rose Bay Ferry going to work in the city. Everyone was sitting there, drab like this. And I was like, this isn't for me. This life is not for me. Then a mate rings. It's funny. You open yourself up to opportunity, and it happens, right? A great mate of mine, Martin Simmons, said, hey, I've got this retail space. It's 25 square metres. It's in North Bondi. 0 foot traffic. It's $450 a week. It wasn't a great space, but there's an opportunity. And he said, why don't you put your photos in there? And I was like, right, okay. I'd quit my job. I had no money. Going broke very quickly. This is the first gallery. I pretty much had to do everything. We're talking, installing lights to things that I shouldn't be doing, to sound system, to that floor. I bought those, I got the deal of the century on these cheap floorboards. They're kind of just like Laminex, they're so bad. And I bought them and chucked them on the gallery, and I was sitting on them, and a guy walked past, and he said, what are you doing with those? And he said, I've got to put them on the floor here to make this look like a gallery. And he goes, that's what I do for a living, would you believe it? And I said, I've got no money to pay you. So I paid him with a carton of beer. And he spent a day with me, and we laid the floor. So that's to give you an idea of how grassroots it was. Then this was opening night. I had to open. So we spent about 8 weeks building up this thing, working out framing. I got a little FPOS machine, didn't know what to do with it, didn't have a till. Remember I was a professional graphic designer, so I didn't know what retail was. Then I had to open. I had $2,000 in the bank. If I didn't open, I couldn't pay the rent, right? The next rent cycle. So I was starting to panic a bit, Then we opened, it was a success. People came from everywhere. The community really got behind it, and it was quite a new idea. Beach photography, presented in a sophisticated way with these acrylic face mounts and this new age stuff. And the first day, we did $16,000 in sales, right? Now, this is a while ago. Now, if you have $2,000 in the bank, I'm only telling you the numbers just to give you, a grip on what was going on. We sold $16,000 on our first day. I was over the moon, that was more money than I've seen in years. And I was like, I'm onto something here. This could work, After that, we didn't do $16,000 every day, I'd like to say, because I was tucked up in North Bondi and we had a mad rash at the start. But I sat in this gallery for about 4 years, 7 days a week. Start at sunrise, shoot, update, open gallery, work a full day in the gallery talking to people, selling, researching how to do retail. Then at night, I used to do freelance graphic design work, websites for people, just to make everything kind of meet. So I'm telling you this because I don't want to pat on the back. If you want this, you got to work really, really hard, right, Chet? Really hard. I was a workaholic. It was 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. And that's what it took, So that was probably the hardest I've ever worked in my life. And I remember my parents ringing me going, oh, you're not a retail man, just make it into an office and let's give all this away. And then, thank God I didn't, right? Because then I'll show you what evolved. And then, obviously, gallery sales grew. Interior designers started looking at my work going, this is cool stuff. We've worked out that interior designers are really great for business because they basically go from house to house and they decorate and they have their favourite suppliers. And if you're on their team, they'll do very well. So if you can have some best buddy interior designers, that's a good way of doing it. Then I started getting into travel. So 4 years hard work, and then I started experimenting overseas. At this point, I'd been shooting Bondi every day for many years. It was fantastic. I loved it, but I probably needed a bit more just to break the monotony. When you travel, you've got perfectly brand new eyes. I find whenever I travel, I'm so inspired. I drive my family nuts. I'm like, stop the car every 5 minutes, shoot, stop the car, Josh, shoot. We just went to Tahiti the other day, and they all patiently sit in the car, watch me do my mad stuff. But travel invigorates this, so if you can travel, it's good. I've now been all over the world, and I can tell you Sydney's not a bad place to live, by the way. Then this started, helicopters. Now, whenever I speak, a lot of people ask me about drones. You got drone? There's a mad craze on about drones at the moment. 10 years ago, I started in helicopters. There were no drones back then. And I love the perspective of shooting down. It's amazing, right? I've been shooting Bondi Beach for so long, I just needed a new breath of fresh air. I felt that it was very undocumented. The only people that were shooting Bondi Beach from a helicopter were real estate agents, real estate companies trying to just go, here's the property. And they were not very creative. Now, again, I couldn't find really anyone shooting from helicopters, long lens, dangling out, doing something arty. I know that must sound crazy because it's just flooded now, but this is a new idea. It's trying to come up with something no one had done before. And I did something interesting. I wrote on one of my daily emails going, the first time I went up in a chopper, I'm about to show you a video, I said, I'm flying on Sunday at 2 o'clock. If you want to be in a photo, peak summer, come down the beach, and you wouldn't believe it. They came. They came down with their boards, and I said, make yourself known. So they were floating on lilos and everything. We went down and shot everything, and the beautiful thing is that generated sales. They wanted to buy from my little gallery, you know. So I didn't realise I was marketing, but that was actually marketing, and I was doing something I really wanted to do. I'm just going to show you, you're probably sick of me talking already, but a little video on helicopter shooting.
I've been shooting on that beach for 18 years. There's stuff going on every day. One day you go down, there's a huge whale in the bay, then it's great surf. It's always different. You know, I live here, I work here. So there's a lot of content, a lot of subject matter. Creatively to get a different angle on something that shot so much, and that's where aerial photography came in for me. It's just, it was unique and it's serious. About 10 years ago, I got into aerial photography. It was actually my wife gave it to me a free flight for Christmas. I mean, it was amazing. Being a shopper, jaws off, hanging out the side. From there, I've been addicted. In Sydney, I use my part. Forrest, I love working with him. He knows to get me out of the glare when it's all blowing up on the ocean. He knows to pull me out the side. He knows which side for me to sit.
I've been working with him for about 3.5 years. As time's gone on, I sort of know what he's after, less communication required to get the trust from the region.
Australia is an amazing coastline. We've got clean beaches, we've got beautiful sand, great colours. I feel lucky to live in Australia. I love aerial shooting because the images that I create from it, I get such a burst of good shots. It's intense. You imagine 50,000 people on Bondi Beach, and I'm the chopper right above them. It's an incredible thing to do. The colours of Bondi was shot on New Year's Day. It's a crazy day on Bondi Beach. The beauty of that shot was I just flew over the beach and noticed everyone had perfectly lined up all their towels. Everyone thinks that I set that up. So when I shot Lone Swimmer, and we're up there looking for uniqueness, something interesting. I saw a girl swimming out in North Bondi over Shadow Bay. The water was pretty amazing. The reflection was on the bottom. So the creative process behind it was just to try and catch that feeling of, you know, a girl swimming in the middle of nowhere in that isolation. Australia's beautiful, it's got beautiful beaches. So people look at my aerial photos, I really want them to get a feeling of being at the beach themselves at that moment. Something relaxing, tranquil. I hope that my photographs show to people outside of Australia that you have a very diverse coast. It's a big place and they spend some time travelling around seeing it.
Sorry about the cheese balls at the end. So this aerial thing, you know, I got addicted to it, like the water photography. I took it all over the world. So Italy, I love shooting Italy, going again in a few months. Rio de Janeiro, Northern Territory, Lizard Island, Great Barrier Reef, you name it. LA, obviously Sydney's beaches a hell of a lot, South Coast. So I basically took that as far and wide as I could. And I do feel that the angle of above is getting a bit overused right now because of the advent of drones. They're very easy to fly, and the resistance to entry is very low. It reminds me a little bit like when GoPros came out and we're all shooting in the water, and GoPro, every kid, I'll never forget one Christmas, every kid had a GoPro, and they're in the shore break at Bondi, and I couldn't even get room to shoot. And that kind of killed that angle for me a little bit, and I stopped shooting fisheye, and now I only shoot long lens in the water. Is it happening with aerials again? I think the entrance into aerial photography is so low. The difference is for me, because I know a lot of people talk about drones with me, is that the resolution isn't there for me in drones. It's just not there. I blow my stuff up very big. And if you want to be taken as a serious fine artist, you can't shoot from those little DJI Mavics or what's the other one, the Phantom, right? But, I'm not saying they're moving very fast, and I have played with drones, but nothing beats a helicopter. It's just paying for it's the problem. As you found out with Murray Fredericks, $5,000 an hour, you really got to fork it out. When we shoot in Italy, I can burn, what was the last bill? It was about 7,000 or 8,000 just in one session, 2-hour session along the Amalfi Coast. The problem is flying helicopters in those luxury areas is they have a huge markup because they're billionaires normally travelling in them. And anyway, it was an interesting journey in Italy, but we go on, there's a little story about that coming up. So I'm starting to develop a style. I started kind of in surf, waves, and I'm kind of evolving into this beach, aerial exhibition or group of photos and underwater, but it's more general for me now. It's not just surf and waves, it's kind of anything to do with the water. And I really think you need a style. People often say to me, I went to someone's house for dinner, I'm pretty sure it was one of your artworks on the wall. Now that's a complete success, right? People need to be able to recognise your work. You need to stand out. I think that these days with social media, it's a blurry mess. It's very blurry, everyone's work. I can't tell who's who. You should be able to recognise your work distinctively. Alexia Sinclair, you now know. If you see that a work like that, you know it's hers, right? I'm in awe of her and Murray. They're so original. And if I was starting out photography, I would be carving something new. I really love Charlie and the mountains and the animals. I was like, he's Australia's only alpine photographer. I thought, oh, great. He's got a little niche. You need a niche. Anyway, so let's go back to, the business stuff. And then we go, all right, so I'm shooting aerials, traveling the world. We had to ramp up the website a bit. So I invested very heavily in online. Now, I'd rather spend on online than physical shops. It's about 30% of our total business is pure organic online. We get orders from all over the world. Every day, we'd probably get an order from the US and the UK. They're the two major destinations for us that we ship to. We had to work out really efficient ways of logistics, how to frame things and packaging properly. It might seem, boring, but that stuff is so important. You get your process right. Now, there's a whole engine under this of getting it right behind our website. It's a complicated thing. To give you, when I tell you numbers, it's to show you how much effort, I guess, has gone into it. So our website, we probably would have spent 150 grand on it, right? So they're big things. One thing that really changed our business was live chat. And live chat, people want to know things now. They don't want to email and wait a day. It's a very now consumer. So we found introducing live chat for $200 a month is probably the best investment I've ever made on anything. But there's a trick. You have to have people to man it. If there's no one on live chat, it's terrible, right? If they're chatting, they get people and no one answers. It's a terrible scenario. So I'm hoping everyone understands what live chat is. It's that little box in the corner. Hi, I'm Tyson, the gallery manager. Can I help you? We can see what they're looking at. Oh, are you interested in an aerial shot? Oh, I see the Bondi ones interest you. That kind of interaction's really on the money at the time. They're hot. They're on the website. And we walk them through the process of buying it online right there and then. All you're trying to do with your websites is eliminate the barriers to buying. Right? We don't want them to ring us. We're right there in the corner chatting. Now, I've got 10 staff, right? So I don't have to sit on it all day. But if you're one person, it's going to be hard. We tried to sub it out, actually, recent to the US. Just at night time when we're asleep, it didn't work. So we're actually looking like we're going to have staff around the clock, our staff trained in the gallery to answer these questions. And boy, do we get questions. You wouldn't believe it. And we get those kids that ask to do the essays for them and all that stuff like the guys were talking about last night. We get them in the droves. So things are getting heating up. Website's starting to go good. We need more space, you know. So then I come across this place. Bondi used to be called Scum Valley. It's not, for such a famous place, it is a bit grimy, dilapidated. It's getting better. I'll never forget. So I'm in my little gallery in North Bondi, and then I walk past this in the main street, well, one of the main streets of Bondi, Cottesloe Street. Someone spray painted For Lease. And I was like, oh my God, I love it. It was a 40-metre driveway to a mechanic's yard at the back. It was a huge site. It wasn't retail. It needed a lot of work, right? So I dove in. To be perfectly honest, I had to borrow a huge amount of money off my parents. I begged them and my brother. I was like, I can make this work. And this is one of those moments where I had a lot of headwind. Everyone was like, you're going too big, you're growing too fast, that's a fixed cost. This is like a 5-year lease. You're going to sweat on it. We spent 220 grand on the first renovation of this gallery. You know, I didn't have that kind of cash, you know. We opened it. To be perfectly honest, it was hitting like broke again straight after this. It was pretty tough. And I opened it in 2009. Now, you all know in 2009, USA sales dried up. Things went quiet for a bit there. And it was a bit scary because I just borrowed all this money and I had this huge 250 square metre gallery. You know, what am I going to do? Anyway, that's what it looks like today. It's a beautiful space. It has a beautiful garden. So it's a really long space, and I put the beautiful garden so that you walk, well, it draws you into our shop. I've worked out that galleries are too easy to walk in and out, and people feel uncomfortable in galleries, so I want to make them feel really comfortable, and the garden does that. So right at the end, there's this, everyone comes and takes pictures of our garden. It's probably one of the most Instagram parts of Bondi. It is a really nice garden by Will Danger. And these are some of the gallery stuff, right? There's 10 people. I've got a laser. Here we go. That guy, he's the gallery manager. We love him. He's been with us for many years. He really strings it together for us. Now, I know there's photographers here that will go, oh, I'm going to open a gallery, or you need a strong team under you. If you want to go take photos and be selling at the same time, they're two different things. You really need a strong team. And retail, I'm going to tell you now, is not easy. It's 7 days a week. We're open right now. The chat's going. It's always going, right? So once you set in motion, it is a lot of work. On a side note, we are looking for a full-timer in the gallery if anyone's interested in the sales floor. So I remember I said that photography I owe a lot to because it's changed my life in every respect. I met my beautiful wife in the gallery. She was a gallery customer. She walked in one day, Debbie, she's sitting in the front row. She came in and offered me 50% off one of my $3,500 pieces. Quite cheeky. She was a born negotiator. And, you know, it kind of grew from there. And we had a couple of kids, Jet and Spike. Jet's in the front row here. Debbie now works in the business. She used to work in Harper's Bazaar and advertising. She has a very strong way of, she was very strong in negotiating, obviously because she offered me 50%, but she had a really good knowledge of like doing deals, coming up with creative ideas, working with brand, a bit of PR, and she's a great partner for me because you can't do everything, right? Now, like, if you wanted us to do something like with your business, you'd talk to Debbie, not me anymore, because you just can't keep your focus on everything. And I found it was a great part of our business to separate. Deb loves doing the deals and the commercial work. I like shaking the pictures. So we're a family business. Oh, my slide's got a bit. We started printing in-house. Now, this was a game changer again. Technology is amazing. You can print really, really amazing quality photographs off these machines that don't take up too much space. We used to use a lab before that. I used to run down the lab. You know, it was in Randwick, Photo King, and get my picture and run away with it. And, you know, and I'd do 1 a week, and then we started doing 5 a week, and then 10 a week, and then we're in the hundreds a week. It was so much better to print in-house. The reason why is you can control your colours really well. It's immediate, it's fast. We do have a lot of customers that are travelling that walk straight in and go, I need it today, I'm flying tonight. We can run a print. I work in the gallery pretty much every day, so I sign everything and inspect everything that goes out. We fortunately had enough space in this new big gallery that we just signed on that we could do a big print studio. So we have 2 full-time printers going all week. It's a lot easier these days to print. You don't have to be, you don't have to have a super amount of knowledge. I have people that I can ring to get to get knowledge from about colour management. But once they're set up, they're pretty good. I'm trying to convince this guy, hopefully he'll take over the business one day, swim out at 15-foot pipe. So Dad can be sitting on a deck chair on the beach. Sorry, that was meant to be with the family shots. Here's another highlight in Aquabumps history. Apple do these keynote speeches, and they're big. They're viewed by millions of people. And I'll never forget one morning I woke up and my phone was just full. And it was messages like, did you see the keynote from Apple? And they featured Aquabumps on there as a demonstration of a new browser, I think it was, for the phone. Anyway, it was a pretty cool highlight. So we're constantly working out ways of spreading the Aquabumps and our artwork, and we've been doing a lot of this pop-up style. We've been doing it in Westfield, there's a lot of people there, but we move this thing around. I designed this thing. It's made out of metal. It has lights. It can fold up, and it can show 12 artworks. It works really well, you have to show your work to as many people as you can to get them interested. So whatever opportunity, here we go, I've got a laser. This is actually a hoarding for Westfield. When things were bad in Westfield, they used to have big white walls, and they rang me and said, do you want to do an exhibition down the side? Now, it's brilliant because so many people walk past it, but it's just got to be presented really well, like a gallery. So that works for us. Yeah, this thing, it's pretty cool. We're going to tour this around Australia at the moment. Now, this is a bit of a learning curve. For the first time ever, I believe artwork needs to be sold. Those pop-ups aren't real. They're just like a bait. I think artwork needs to be sold in a gallery. It needs to be sold in our environment, beautiful with the garden on the end, and it builds that feeling of luxury. We did this it's still there at the airport. It's a little Aquabump stand. We did a deal with the airport operator, the Heinemann. They said, righto, we want really niche, high-end Australian products. We gave it a go. It probably wasn't our thing. For example, I said, don't put us near koalas, flags, boomerangs. So maybe I'm a control freak, but I find it very difficult other people selling our stuff, you know what I mean? They don't present it how I want. I want everything immaculate. It sounds like the 3 C's from Gary Healy, control, control, control. You've got to control how it's presented. We did a little test. We do sell a lot online. We have a big gallery in Bondi. Last year we opened up a gallery in the Rocks on George Street. It was just an opportunity that came knocking on our door to open a space just to test that tourist market. To be perfectly honest, I felt like the benefit wasn't as great for the effort that you had to put in for a multi-store. It's a big effort having multi-store if you're not set up. If one's quite manageable, but you have multi-store. You ask Ken Duncan, I actually rang him before I opened that to get some advice on that, and he actually used to have this space before me. So from this, my learnings were, maybe just focus online and a big Bondi store, a big flagship store. That kind of works for me rather than having 20 stores. We're not like a 7-Eleven. That's what I feel at the moment. Just something that we work on every now and again. We get requests for really big artwork. This is the Facebook office in Sydney. Now, it's 12 metres by 12 metres. It's a giant piece. This is actually Dropbox. And they create great little working environments for people. We don't do too much of this because our main focus is the gallery, framed artworks. But we've done Google offices. We've done, I did the Commonwealth Banks. I actually did all their offices just around the corner in Darling Park. You know, just to give them, it was a good little thing we did for many years, and it helped kind of, when we're growing the business, to kind of supplement. We did, Basic is a beautiful Australian-made, high-end fashion brand. I love their stuff. We did a T-shirt with them. They're famous for the big dot, and we put a photographic print in the big dot. We did that another year. So we only do 1 or 2 of these a year, but while we're doing it, we're trying to reach their people. They have people. So if you go into one of these shops, I mean, they're selling T-shirts for $180. Their clientele are pretty good for us, right? Because they've got disposable income. And they'll talk about it on their channels. Like with Speedo, Speedo is born out of Bondi Beach. A lot of people don't know that. That's why there's a Speedo's Cafe in Bondi. So we thought 2 businesses born in Bondi, there's a synergy there. Why don't we do something together? Debbie came up with a swimwear and a board short range. Now we're in our 7th season now, I think. This is actually the first one, so it might look a bit kind of outdated. But you've got to remember back then, not many people were printing on Lycra and stuff like that. So this is kind of new. And we do it for, the news. We always want to be seen as active and doing things and not a brand that's kind of diminishing. One year we did sunglasses. Now, great story, Bailey Nelson. They've got 123 stores. They started from the Bondi markets. They're 2 guys. They look like about 30 years old. They're so young. They worked really hard. They came to us and said, we'd like to do something with you. They had a store right next to us. We're like, yeah, great. So we came up with packaging and the inside, like a Paul Smith, just a really subtle way of doing it. You've got to control it. We are very involved in the process. If it's overtly commercial or doesn't look good, we will not do it. And once again, Deb manages a lot of this, which is great. This is quite a big thing. So we got a brief from Canon. So I'm a Canon master. I don't know if you know what I mean. There's like 15 of us that work with Canon, and I work with their printers. And they wanted to show something grand with their printers. They were like, why don't you dream something really big and we'll try and pull it off. And Deb actually came up with this idea of putting the world's biggest print from an Italian aerial shot, printed on Canon printers in the Icebergs pool on Thursday when they clean it. We really wanted to keep this in the pool for a week so that people could swim over it, but they were really worried about it reacting, even though it wasn't going to. They were quite conservative. So then we did a big event and an exhibition around it. It was fantastic. It was also with Santa Victoria Water. Why we did it at Icebergs is it's an iconic location, and also it reminded us of Italy. The beach clubs in Italy are all concrete and painted white, so we thought, well, let's just do it there. So it took about 7 hours to install. It took 4 cars to bring all the prints in. It was done in sections and then Velcroed together. It was a big deal. A lot of people took home parts of it, which is kind of funny, and made things out of it, like handbags. It was pretty funny because, I wanted to recycle it. Okay, books. Here's another one. Everyone always said to me, books are an ego thing. Don't go and do a book. If you do, go with Phaidon or someone, big publisher. And I was like, it doesn't sound like me. I met with a couple of publishers and it wasn't really my cup of tea. Anyway, so they said you couldn't do it. And then righto, I flew to China. By the way, you can't print. I would have done it here if I could, but if you want to print a book that opens up that wide, they just laugh at you in Australia. They go, have you got a couple of $1 million? This book, A Day at Bondi, it's basically goes from morning to night. It was a very simple idea. It just featured all my Bondi shots, sold for $150. We sold 7,000 copies. We've stopped running it now. We're not doing any more runs. It won a APA, in 2011 as the best photo book. which was pretty flattering. And then I thought, well, no, we're going to go bigger. Then we produced the Beach blog, this is a love project. The paper, it's kind of like Ken Duncan's book out there, not the same spec. Here's his books on Hummermill, but this is, Swedish papers. It had a lenticular on the cover. When you move it, it changes pictures. It has like 60 pictures on it. Trying to research that in China and then get it embedded. You probably noticed like stuff like that. And then, can you believe this is hand painted? That's black. One guy, well, I'm assuming about 500 guys, hand painted all our books around the edge. A lot of amazing detail in this book. See all this? No fonts, handwritten, scanned. So the book's about that fat, $150, but it's something beautiful to keep all your work together and tell a great story. Here's our latest book. People were having trouble carrying 5 kilograms. They were like, this book, love it, but it's too big. And that's when we came up with this one, the Bondi book, which is $50. It's probably our mass product. And a lot of people come to the gallery, they just want a little something, and this kind of quenches that need. All right, let's talk about mishaps. Now, in the brief from Glenn, you go, tell us about things that go wrong. It doesn't always go right. And everyone loves talking about mishaps. So if you think water photography's, I remember before I talked about it's hard. It keeps people out, whereas I find aerial drones, everyone can fly them. Not everyone can swim with a camera and shoot. It's like a bowling ball. They're pretty big and heavy, and it's hard to swim. This is Voodoo. Great name for a reef. It's down in Cronulla. This was, believe it or not, a big day, and the reefs are way out the back. It's pretty gross, but I was crossing over from the right to the left, and a big set came, and I couldn't believe it. It's so powerful that it drove me straight headfirst into the reef. And I thought I had seaweed on my top of my head, and it was actually my scalp. So I had to go to the local joint, get stitched up. This is Italy, Capri, a beautiful place. We go there a lot. I love shooting aerials in Italy. It's amazing. Well, this trip was an interesting one. We took off. It took about 6 months to negotiate the helicopter. We took off from this guy's front yard, and he didn't have a harness for me because I quite often stand on the skids. He had a piece of rope, which is great if you go down in the ocean, you're tied to the chopper and you go down with it. We brought someone, and I said, your job is to untie me if anything goes wrong, because I just want to get out of the chopper. Debbie came as well, my wife, which probably isn't a good move. We're all in one spot while the kids were back in Australia. Anyway, what happened? I actually was shooting that shot, and I was pushing him for a manoeuvre, going, back, come on, and they don't speak any English, and he's arguing, a lot of confusion. He did a reverse, and gust blew up the tailpipe of the turbine, and it stalled the chopper at 2,000 feet. Now, chopper pilots here will probably know, it's all right, because you can auto-rotate down, but it's pretty scary, right, when your motor cuts out, and you're at 2,000 feet. Thank God it rebooted. I now insist on twin turbine helicopters, so they don't stall. But if you ever get to go to Capri, this is amazing. Here's another mishap. Like I said, we've been experimenting with drones. This is the first time we took one of these big octos to this is the Mentawai Islands, very remote. Had never been documented by helicopters or drones. So I really wanted to do it because it was a first. I partnered with Paul. He is really good with the tech, and we dropped that octo in the water that day. That's why he's not looking too particularly happy right there. It's $20,000 octo we dropped. Anyway, a lot of lessons learnt there. You'll like this, Charlie. So the other day, it was probably a year ago now, I was in New Zealand, Tourism New Zealand, took me to the top of a mountain, right, to do heli skiing for my birthday. It was my birthday, and they said, surprise, you're going to the top of a mountain. Now, I can't ski. I'm hopeless in mountains. 15 kilo camera pack on my back. It's like my worst nightmare. It was the worst day. I basically rolled down the hills. I mean, you imagine rolling down there with a 15, and they just thought I was. So I've got a new respect for the Bondi surf beginners now, because that's my element. I was totally, but you got to push yourself. Another mishap, I don't know if you call this a mishap, it's something I probably wouldn't do again. I shot for Vogue one day. I got asked to shoot for Vogue, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. 12 people, 5 of them for makeup, 4. And I know like Alexia Sinclair would probably love that environment with that, but I can't handle all these people around me. Pipeline, we used to spend 1 month a year at Pipeline in Hawaii, North Shore. That place is probably one of my favourite waves to shoot. It's incredible. It's basically it's a huge tube that comes out of nowhere. It's very tricky to shoot. It makes you feel safe in the channel, and then the current will start and drag you into the impact zone. On this particular day, it was a day after this day, I thought it'd be a great idea to swim out. There was only one other photographer out there called Zach Knoll. He was an Olympic swimmer. I can vividly remember thinking, I'm never going to get in. There's a reef next to Pipe called Gums, and it's like a churning machine. And I just think it's like a drowning machine. And I reckon that's probably the closest I've ever got to drowning, because I'm dragging my camera / bowling ball with me through this. And anyway, I got ashore, probably about 1 kilometre down the beach. Not exactly, I was pretty tired that night. All right, what next? Okay, so I'm nearly wrapping up if I'm running out of time. I said it before, you've got to innovate. You've got to do something different. You have to do something that's unique. I'm constantly experimenting or tinkering. I've been playing around with this $50 pole and just strap a camera on the end of it and see what happens, because you get this kind of weird, I haven't perfected it. It's very difficult to hold the pole in the water all the time without dropping it. But that's something I'm working on. Video. Now, I'm falling in love with video. I think everyone is. It's great for, your social channels to do video, and we have all the cameras can shoot video. At the moment, we're doing 12 movies for Google with this phone. This is a Google Pixel phone. It's a challenge for me. Haven't really done much phone photography, but that's something we're doing this year, and we haven't released anything yet, but you'll see it's all about to come out. The US market, so future for us, I feel at the moment today, the US market's too big to ignore. We sell there every day. I think we'll have to do a lot more exhibitions over there and focus on there. There's just so many people there, and they love Aquabumps. Now, this is something pretty interesting. Tomorrow, we've got a shoot on. My wife has put together this little project with Dropbox and Dion Lee and the Australian Ballet Company. So tomorrow we're in the Olympic pool at Homebush, and we're going to shoot them all underwater in the black. This is just our test shot, so it's nothing. I'm not saying that's magnificent. We're going to do this stuff underwater in Dion Lee dresses. It's a collaborative effort. Dion Lee's a famous Australian fashion designer who lives in New York. The Dropbox kind of is something that Deb worked on, where we all collaborated through Dropbox. They've got a new product they're releasing that you can all collaborate from opposite ends of the globe. So that's tomorrow. Okay, I'd like to just finish on, I hope that my journey has inspired you to kind of believe in yourself, that you just got to do this stuff, right? You can't sit around and think, oh, maybe, I don't plan. I just go for it. Give things a go. You'd be amazed at where you get steered, So I went from that cubicle to starting something I like doing, not monetary, and then it kind of weaved into artwork sales online, and then galleries, and then these collaborative deals. So I really hope you got something out of it, and I hope one of you really, gives it a fair go and finds a niche and finds a life in photography, because it's a good life. Thank you.